this illustration of this child that has got autism carrying a heavy rucksack is actually close to reality for the majority of children that I see in clinic that have a diagnosis of autism level 2 and level 3. You guys have heard me say, when you have a child that has got autism level 2, I want you to think of it as autism plus something else. If you have a child that has got autism level 3, I want you to think of it as autism plus plus. What am I saying? I am only saying that the more the issues your child has, the heavier the load. If your child has got mercury toxicity, mold toxicity, food intolerances, sensory issues, mitochondria issues, the nervous system issues, your child is carrying a heavy load. And for them to get to the place where we call recovery, they are going to struggle because the burden is very heavy. The higher the ACCTS score, the heavier the load. The lower the ACCTS score, the lesser the load. And what we are endeavoring to do in this series is to lessen the burden, to reduce the burden, to drop the ACCTS point, to allow our children to be free and to live a healthy lived experience. Have you been exposed to mold when you were pregnant with your baby, when your baby was born, or right now, are you in a moldy environment? Let me know in the chat. Remember this little boy? Adding mold on top of the other issues that this little boy is battling with becomes a heavy burden. This is actually in PubMed, in the clinical journals. The title of the case study is Rapid Complete Recovery from autism spectrum disorder after treating aspergillosis with antifungal drugs. Okay, so if you want to look for it, it's a very, very simple case study. And I have loads of case studies as well in clinic. I'm hoping I'm going to be playing some of the testimonials that I have for you so that you can see that this is not uncommon. This is very common. Am I saying I've had a child lose their recovered like rapidly like this? Not really. But what we've seen in clinic is that when we address the subject of mold, when we address mycotoxins in particular, the child actually does very well, really does very well. Some children gain their language. All the symptoms, signs and symptoms associated with autism, they go away. Why not saying is you will see that when I talk to you about the symptoms of autism, so when we talk about the symptoms of autism, they are very similar to the majority of the symptoms of mold toxicity. And when we are talking about mold toxicity, we are not saying children with autism are the only ones that have got mold toxicity. This is a global subject. This is everybody, anybody can be affected by mold, and they can experience these varied symptoms. So it's not an isolation it's not an isolated case for children with autism. The reason we are talking about it on this platform is because we know very well that if our children have got mold toxicity, they've got issues with mycotoxins, and they show up in a clinician's office, if they have a diagnosis of autism, immediately people forget that there is a possibility that this child may also be having other issues other than autism. This is what the whole storyline we are here for. That's all that I'm just like talking about, is because really I really want us to look beyond autism. I want you to go back and challenge the practitioners that you're working with. If your child is not improving, if your child is not showing any progress, I want you to stop and go to your practitioner, to your doctor, and say, hey, is it possible that we have mold issues here? Because when you deal with the mold issues, the results are just amazing. They're miraculously amazing. So as you can see, let's go straight to the results because we don't have time. We've got an hour, 5 minutes with you guys already. I'm running late. But look at this. Just look at this. These are the results. So the results of this case study is the child had a complete recovery from all symptoms. all symptoms. Let's just highlight this beautiful thing here that has just happened. Look at this, guys. Those that are on Zoom with me, just look at this. All symptoms. The child had complete recovery from all symptoms of autism, and in addition, developed excellent academic, athletic, and musical skills. This just gives me chills. I'm just going quiet, right? Because even I am just taking it and I'm feeling this. Are all the children going to lose the symptoms associated with autism? Obviously, the answer is not all the children will lose the symptoms of autism when we address mold, because that's not correct, because some children will have other other metabolic or biomedical issues that we also need to deal with. Remember, we talked about the toxicology. If you haven't watched, it was a masterclass where we addressed the toxicology. What is a toxicology, Nazain? You may be asking. The total burden of that children are carrying. For the children that I look after complex children that have got autism. Most of them, they are not just coming with autism as the singular diagnosis. Most of them are coming with a number of other problems. This is why you hear me saying, if your child has got autism level 2, I want you to think of it as Autism Plus. If your child has got autism level 3, like where Jojo started, I want you to think of it like Autism Plus Plus. So if you scroll down, let's scroll down on this study, and I want you to look at, let's just get rid of that thing, shall we? Look at all the symptoms. Let me just read these symptoms out for you. Hyperactivity, acting silly, cradle cap, awakens at night screaming, meltdowns, awakes at night, jumps a lot when pleased, climbs in high places, flaps hands, restless, difficult in sleeping, jerks during sleeping, night sweats, destructive, fidgety, fearful of harmful things, hyperactive again, constantly moving, flapping hands. Doesn't this sound like a child who has autism level 3? Doesn't this sound like a child who has autism level 3? Eczema, itchy legs, gluten intolerance, lactose intolerance, casein intolerance. Doesn't that sound like a child who has an ACTX score that is above 90, 100? Doesn't that sound like a child with autism? It really does. But this child actually didn't really have the classic diagnosis of autism, because this autism went away when they treated mold. If all these symptoms went away by giving this kid antifungals targeting mold, this is then answering that question why we have this series. Is there anything else in this big bag that is being presented as autism level 2, autism level 3, that we can deal with? And in regards to this kid, in that case study, the answer is yes. And that big bag, that heavy bag, was carrying a lot of mold. And when they dealt with that mold, that boy was set free from carrying a heavy load he didn't have to carry in his life. It is very, very common, extremely common, more so when you're in England or you're in areas where it's humid and it's cold, there isn't a lot of sunshine. I really want you to think, is it possible that my child has got mold issues? Later on, I'm going to be sharing with you some of my testimonials in clinic to just show you that this is not just only Dr. Shaw and Dr. Becker that are having these experiences. I have clients that come in with severe children, and when we address these things in clinic, these kids drop these ATEC points, they drop all these behaviors that they were having. Am I saying we are curing autism? That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about maximizing our children's potential. We're talking about us looking inside that bank and taking out what isn't supposed to be in there. We are doing exactly what we didn't do when a child doesn't have a diagnosis of autism. Did I just say that? We are doing exactly what we do when the child doesn't have a diagnosis of autism. If a child doesn't have a diagnosis of autism and they've got asthma, they've got eczema, they've got, they're aggressive, people will move differently. And I'm saying let's move differently for our children that have got a diagnosis of autism, and let's address that mode, because when we do, the child is going to feel relieved and they will live a healthy lived experience. Do you feel hopeful right now? Let me know in the chat. Let me know if you feel hopeful. Let me know if you feel hopeful. Let's look at what part of the bodies are these mycotoxins going to affect. This diagram that you see here illustrates where mold goes and the type of mycotoxins that this mold releases. Really, they release a lot of different mycotoxins. We've got things like gliotoxins, acrotoxins, and those are the ones that we see quite a lot in clinic, alpha toxins, and all these toxins, they affect the body differently, and they will affect the organs differently. On top of the list, which I see in clinic, are gliotoxins. In clinic, these are the majority of the toxins that I see, as well as aflatoxins as well. When you look at the studies that have been done around mold, we know 80% of the symptoms associated with mold, the immune system is the one that is hit big with mold. Now, when we look at children that have got autism, what system is really troubled in most cases? It's the immune system. That's why in the deep dive, for those that are in the deep dive with me, you find that when we are looking at addressing systems, we are practically looking at these systems very closely, because these are the systems that actually the majority of the children that have got autism have issues with. The immune system, 80%, 70% neurological systems. Think about it, right? The brain is being affected by these new mycotoxins. The liver is being affected by these mycotoxins. The nerves are affected by these mycotoxins. So these are not things that we should be welcoming in our house. These are the things that when we really see we need to aggressively deal with them, because they really do cause a big havoc, and the burden is too heavy. You can imagine the whole system being affected. How much of a struggle is your child going through? Your child is not being naughty. It's not because the supplements are not working. It's not because the therapist is not good. It's not because the ABA and the speech and therapists, they are just scams. It's not because the clinician that last saw your child doesn't know what they're doing. It's truly because the load is heavy. It is mold that is in the system that is causing havoc. Mold enters your child through the nose and the mouth. Okay, these are the two entry points of mold: the nose and the mouth. They are inhaling the mycotoxins. They are eating the mycotoxin. That's why I just thought you said walls. Yes, we're going to cover that. We're going to look at food as well, because it's also one of the sources of mold. Let's start with entry point number one. The environment is the biggest source of mold. And usually the inhalation of the mycotoxins usually happens at night. I want you to think about it. Remember night, sleep. I want you to pay attention to night and sleep, because we will need to address those things today. We will need to pay attention to those things. So mold loves wet and moist areas. If it's wet, if it's moist, if it's damp, mold is going to love being in that place. Mold loves places where there is poor ventilation, in basements, in showers, tubes, pipes, where there are leaks, or where you have experienced more flooding, or air conditioners. It reminds me, takes me back when I went to Gambia. we had to use a lot of air conditioners. And like here in England, we don't need to have air conditioners. We actually have got issues with condensation because it's always cold and we have a lot of heating happening and we are cooking, etc. But in Gambia, it's hot, so we needed a lot of air conditioners. And unfortunately, the way we were living, they didn't clean the air conditioner. So every time we used an air conditioner, we would have a massive trigger. I would wake up with a throat infection and a nasal congestion, equally the same with my son. And so mold loves areas that are wet. So this is going to be our main focus for addressing mold, the environment. I know when it comes to food sources, I can hear a parent, I can hear a mom saying that, so you want to take away one more food out of my child's diet. Remember, when you see one child with autism, you've seen one child with autism. The reason of this master's class is not for us to address what is going on specifically with your child, but it is us bringing you into awareness of what is possibly happening, that you can bring your practitioner, whoever you're working with, to pay attention to what is going on with your child, to bring them into awareness, and that this is a possible area, and also for you to take the steps that you need to take to help your child to move forward, or possibly for you to join the deep dive, because we address all these things in the deep dive. Food sources, the mouth is one of the main entries. I want you to think about nuts. You're talking cashew nuts, Brazil nuts, ground nuts, all form of nuts. Again, it's usually because of storage and being exposed to moist. With grains, these are high risk. The majority of grains, again, it's a subject of storage. I want you to think of barley, rye, corn, wheat, sorghum, and any form of grains. I want you to really just continue. Is it possible that these can be contaminated with mold? Cheese on its own is intentionally created using mold. So molds are what makes cheese. So cheese is going to be a high risk for many children, especially those that have got immune issues. Spices, you're talking dried spices. When they are dried, there will be a high risk of mold. Things like paprika, coriander, peppers, etc. You really want to make sure that you pay attention to what you're having. The majority of these food sources, if you want to look at this, if those that are with me, I can see some of my moms here that are in the deep dive, you're probably saying, yes, because you'll probably notice that in week 1 and week 2, we're removing these food sources in week 1 and week 2. And possibly that is why we see a lot of miracles in the week 1 and week 2 of the deep dive, right? Because we're removing the sources of mold. Mold loves moist and sugar. Moist and sugar. That's amazing, right? That's a great combination for mold, right? And I know very well the majority of our children, they're already, deprived of a number of snacks. And so it's very easy for us to go for healthy snack. And we're bringing in things like, dried fruits. But unfortunately, these dried fruits increase the risk of more mycotoxins going through the mouth. So raisins, dates, figs, prunes, and apricots, when they are dried, they are at risk of actually of mold. So really, you want to avoid this, especially if you have a child that has got autism level 1 and level 3, and just do fresh fruits. Just do fresh fruits. Okay, let's just have a breathe. Let's just breathe a little bit. What is going on in your mind? Just breathe, mommy. Let me know in the chat. Are you feeling overwhelmed? Do you feel validated? For some of us, I felt validated when I realized mold was a big issue, because every time I looked at my son, I kept saying, there's something else that is going on here that is not just autism. Do you feel validated, or do you feel confused? Let me know in the chat. So let's see if we can bring in some positive energy. Okay, and I wasn't prepared for this, so I'm just going to walk you through my website. This is our website. This is where we've got our success stories. So let me see if I can play a testimonial for you guys. I know your baby has dropped, but what was the ATOX score? 63. 63. Where was he before? He was 103. He was 103 before.
Yes, yes. Hold on. Just don't scare me. Yeah, really. In the beginning, it was probably 3, yeah. He was 103. Yes. And now he's. Oh my goodness, I'm proud of him. I think you're on the leaderboard in the speed of dropping the ATEC points. And I'm really proud. It dropped too much, really. Since I stopped the B12, he's very quiet and also understand things. I'm really happy with that. And also, he's when I tell him something to do, he understand also tidy up his things. I'm really happy with that, really. And also eating, he's eating more, playing by himself with his brother. I'm really happy. And I see so much really improvement with him. I can't tell you how I'm happy with him, really. And just the beginning.
Okay, I hope you feel better. I hope you feel better. When I hear moms talking like this, I actually feel better, because normally when we start, the journey is very overwhelming, like you are feeling overwhelmed. And in that case, actually, that little boy was also exposed to mold. The kid is doing amazing now, and he's part of my deep dive program. And it is my desire that by the end of 6 months, that kid is going to be losing the majority of his 80 points. Not saying, is that a guarantee? No, it's not a guarantee. But this is one thing that we know very well, that when we apply therapeutic protocols that are not all over the place, we know we're going to see the results. And this is why we're talking about mold. Okay, this is why we're talking about mold. So let's move forward. How do you feel? Let me know in the chat. And please give this beautiful mom some hearts wherever you are, wherever you're listening to this wherever you listen to this testimonial. Just do me a favor and just give this mom some hearts, because she's doing an amazing job. I promise you, she's doing an amazing job. When we put things in place in a strategic way, it's easy. There isn't any guesswork. That's why we put the deep dive in place. There is no guesswork. There is no, I try this, I'll try that. No, we are practically putting in place therapeutic protocols that we know will help our children to go forward. And when we then come back after the deep dive and we zoom in directly into the child, this is when the one-on-ones come in. We know we target therapeutic protocols, and that child will move to the other side. Remember that little boy? When we target therapeutic protocols, this little boy is going to feel better. In that testimonial, that kid started off with 103. That's a heavy load. Heavy load. He's currently lost over 40 points. The bag is beginning to be lighter. I hope if we have time, I will share with you another testimonial so that you can see it's possible. It's not just Dr. Sean. These things are happening for thousands of other children, and I want it to happen for you. So now let's move forward. Now we know the entry point, the environment. We now need to find this mold in the house. Let's rule it out. Don't just roll your eyes and say, I don't have mold. My house is a new build. I promise you, the new builds, they are also at risk of having mold. The older buildings, even more so. If you're in England with me, even more so. Even when you're in Africa, I want to encourage you to rule mold out. Don't just say there is no possibility of mold. So we want to visually inspect, to look out for black, white, green patches on your wall. I want you to go behind your cupboards, go in your child's drawers, go in the bathroom, under the sink, and check if you've got mold. If you have had a leak before, if you have had a flood before, and you've not had somebody come and assess your house professionally, please do just that. And let's get somebody to come and test your home. They'll just get a bit of some dust, they'll test for mold, and you can then deal with the mold. We are going to go cover that. But for now, I want us to just talk about ruling it out. Let me know in the chat if you have already found mold in your house and you're saying that I don't need to do all these things. I know I've got mold. Just let me know in the chat if you have mold in your house. The next thing I want you to do is to rule it out in the body. Okay? We know your child has been exposed to mold. Now you need to consider ruling out mold and running the mycotoxins panel. I can hear somebody saying it's too much. Like one of my moms said, and saying, let's just say it's mold. Let's just deal with it as it's mold. Unfortunately, when it comes to mycotoxins, we can't do that, and I'll tell you why. And in clinic, we use real-time or mosaic to test for mycotoxins. And if you're wanting to test for mycotoxins, let me know in the chat, let me know in the comment, and I will actually help you order that. If you are in the community, you've got your order sheet already. If those that don't know about the deep dive community, there's a deep dive community, which is not the deep dive program, but there's also the community where you can have all these resources and all these replies. So you can also join the deep dive community. I'm going to leave the link for you in there, but we can actually help you do these labs, and we talk about these labs. I'm going to be showing you a sample right now. So with the mycotoxins, you are just going to be sent a container to collect your child's urine, and you're going to call the DHL, and they'll pick up your child's urine, and they'll take it to your lab, to the lab. In 4 weeks, we will have the results. It's a urine test, so it's very easy. These are the tests that I run in clinic. I never go for anything that is extremely invasive. We can order that for you. Just let me know if you need support to order that. So if you can look at this is one of my little kids that has got mold issues. So as you can see, when we did the mycotoxins, she had acrotoxins and gliotoxins. And remember, gliotoxins and acrotoxins, they affect the brain, that affect the liver, they affect the immune system. And this young lady, if you were to look at her organic acid test, actually, let me see if I can pull this out for you guys and show you. If we look closely, this little girl has got quite a lot of overgrowth, pathogenic overgrowth. Look at how yeasty this kid is. Look at that. Okay, let's just see if we can mark that for you guys to see. Can you see that? That's quite a lot of issues with the gut. And we can also look at that. I know we are just talking about mold, but equally look at the burden that this kid has in the gut. So the child has got a lot of pathogenic overgrowth in the gut. So the gut is really affected. And if you have mold and this kind of presentation in the gut, remember that little boy with a big satchel? This is exactly what we're looking at. So we will look at seeing a higher ATIC score. But again, let's breathe, because we can deal with these things. So what makes it so big a deal for children with autism? I've already talked about the total toxic load. So the children with autism, they've got a number of things that are happening, right? They have got, the gut is not doing great. The mitochondria is struggling, heavy metals, immune system, endocrine system. They have got a lot of things happening. So if they're exposed to mold, unlike their counterparts, unlike their siblings, unlike their family members, their bodies cannot deal with the mold. The other thing is, some of our children really are completely depleted in the key minerals and nutrients that they need to support with detoxification. When you're talking about mold, we're also talking about detoxification. Let's look at this organic acid test. Let me just mark that. So we were talking about detoxification system. So for us to be able to detoxify, we need simple things like vitamin C. You guys, you've heard me talk about vitamin C at length. The majority of the children are coming back with a low vitamin C. That's why really vitamin C, yes, really, because we understand most of our children are picky eaters. And there's also one thing that I know very well. Most parents really don't think about vitamin C. They're thinking about big things like high doses folic acid, B12, etc. Nobody really thinks about vitamin C, but vitamin C is very important, and it plays a big part when we are actually putting these therapeutic protocols to support our children. So as you can look at this beautiful little cat that had mold issues. Look at where vitamin C is. It's supposed to be at least around 100 to 200. The kid has got 7.4. That's a marked depletion of a key nutrient that we actually need to support detoxification. It's an antioxidant, right? And so if the child has got this level of vitamin C, anything that comes to this kid is not going to be able to eliminate it, because the kid doesn't have the nutrients that we need to support for detoxification. And then if you go down, let's just take that away. If you go down there, okay, you guys, you've heard about glutathione, NAC, right? Master antioxidant. This kid has got 000. So this kid is already in trouble. So if your child is in a moldy environment and has got low vitamin C, like in this case, and lower glutathione, like in this case, they are sleeping, they're breathing those mycotoxins. Unfortunately, it's not going to be the end results are not going to be so beautiful. Let's take a break. Let's take a break, right? We know we have a situation, but we also have a solution. We know we have a big total burden, but we also know what is inside. So we're going to take it out and the child is going to have a healthy lived experience. That's all we are doing. That's all we're doing. So let's take a break and we'll come back and we're going to look at how to address mold. I promise you, I'm going to give you the solution and the tools. Remember, I'm going to give you the tools.
Modern life is continually pushing the vitality of our children to its limits, slowly taking away the sparkle in their eyes. This has been a sharp increase in brain-related illnesses like anxiety, depression, ADHD, and autism. More than ever, you need a coherent voice to guide you or your child back to optimal brain health. Do not leave it to guesswork. ACCTS uses an evidence-based, holistic, naturopathic approach to maximize your child's potential and change their outcome. If you do nothing, it does not get better. Act now and allow us to help you put a smile back on your child's face. Your child is deserving, and so are you. They said it wouldn't, and they did. They said they won't, and they will. ACCTS maximizing potential and changing outcomes one child at a time.
To address mold, we have to address it holistically. I'm a holistic naturopathic nutritionist. That's why I just don't say, give this to your child, give this to your child. Sorry, this slide is a little bit busy. I apologize for that. But I'm going to summarize for you. This is just an action plan. And don't forget, you have a downloadable if you are in the community. You are in the download. You can get the downloadable in the community in the deep dive. If you're on this master's class, we are leaving a link for you to get this downloadable that has got a complete guide in addressing mold. So don't worry about taking notes. I just put it here as a reminder to me so that I don't forget to talk to you about it. But you have your complete guide that you can download and use it, because I've put in quite a lot of information in there that is helpful, that I use in clinic with my clients and that I also use in the deep dive. The first and foremost important thing in terms of addressing the environment is reducing humidity. It really needs to be below 50. If it's above 50, then mold is going to really love that area because it's warm and moist. It's going to grow. So you need to bring in a dehumidifier if you're in England, okay? You also need to bring in an air purifier as well. And you also need to make sure that you're addressing leaks very quickly. Please don't roll your eyes if there's a leak and say we're going to deal with it. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal because it stops being a small problem to a big problem when that little patch of mold, brings out fumes that are just going to affect your child. I've spoken about the air filters, the HEPA filters. These are the ones that we use. I have one in my house. Put them in your child's bedroom, specifically the child that is vulnerable. And in this case, this is the kid that has got autism. Sorry, I've got to advocate for this kid. Open the windows, open the windows, open the windows, open the windows. Please open the windows. Even if you're in England, I know we want to save electricity and energy, but you need to open the windows, because if you don't open the windows, the mold is just going to grow. It just loves moist condensation. Open the windows. Clean the surfaces with vinegar and hydrogen peroxide. Don't do bleach, please. Don't do bleach. You know very well in this community we don't use bleach. So look out at your deep cleaning sheet and use use things that are clean, because we don't want to bring in another burden on our children, right? Remove wet clothes, damaged materials off the floor. And I can tell you this, I always advocate for no carpets because they will harbor a lot of dust, and we know dust holds mycotoxins. And if you're not going to be hoovering and shampooing your carpet regularly, then it's very likely that you will have mycotoxins. So I would really advocate for wooden floors or tiles, because in most cases, they are very easy to clean. And let me just add into that subject of environment. I know I've covered a few bits, but let me just add into this subject a little bit. Do not leave wet towels in the house. Do not dry your clothes in the house, because that's going to increase the humidity of the house. When you're cooking, make sure you're opening your windows and your doors. We know that, not saying I know you know, I'm just reminding you. When you have a shower, open the windows, get a vent. In my house, I've got one that continues to run for 10 minutes after I've finished having a shower. Open the windows, open the doors, and declutter the house, especially the bedrooms, the papers, the books, the boxes. Just declutter those things, the basements, the garages. Declutter, let our house aerate. It's very, very important. Okay. And like I said, carpets, try and rethink that subject of carpets and avoid. I have been guilty of this. I promise you, I've been guilty of this. Leaving wet laundry in the washing machine. Once your washing machine runs, take that take the laundry out of the washing machine and dry it outside the house. Okay. Now let's address this subject closely. Let's draw the kid into our presence and let's start looking after them directly. We know your child has been exposed to mold. Your mycotoxins results are out. What do? Let's support the child to heal. And in this case, we are looking at the child holistically. Remember that we are not just isolating one area. We're looking at the whole child. On top of the list is sleep. We need to make sure that our babies are sleeping. If you haven't watched any of my recordings, when I speak about sleep, if you're on YouTube, please go ahead and watch that, because without sleep, there is no healing. Without making sure, optimizing the environment where your child is sleeping, there is no healing. Remember, when your child is sleeping, they're going to be in that space for over 8 hours and inhaling those mycotoxins. So we need to make sure that the environment is clutter-free. We need to make sure that there's aeration. Open the windows. We also need to make sure that there is an air filter where possible. But truly, you also need to make sure that your child is sleeping at the same time and waking up at the same time. Don't underestimate the importance of sleep. When we sleep, our brains detoxify. Our brains reset and clean up during sleep. The lymphatic system is really, really there, right? So we need to allow our children's brains to clean up, and that can only happen during sleep. I definitely know that our children that have been exposed to mold with mold toxicity, sleep can be a bit of an issue. So we can always support that a little bit further in clinic by bringing in sleep aids. The sunlight, no brainer. We are all animals, right, mummies? We are all animals, and we need to be outside. We need the sun. We also need fresh air. And I know it's a bit difficult when you're in England, 23 hours of the day, we are indoors. It is what it is, but we need to purposely get our children exposed to the sunlight as well as get fresh air. I promise you, it's get out of the house, get into the taxi, from the taxi onto class, go for a break for 30 minutes, come back into the class, get into a taxi and get into the home, and they're in front of the TV. That is the routine for the majority of our children. So we need to break that routine. We need to look at it and purposely get the children to have fresh air. It's very important. There's a lot of studies on how sunlight actually helps. The next thing you want to bring in is exercise. Get the kids moving. But in case of mold toxicity, we don't want exercises that are actually intense, because remember, the whole system is being affected by these mycotoxins, and we need to preserve energy, but we also need to make sure that the body is moving and circulation and increasing circulation is very, very important. So light exercises, walking, and we love the trampoline. I know we love, get them to enjoy the trampoline. Okay, the next thing is rest, remove pressure, remove pressure. Nobody heals under pressure. Nobody heals under pressure. This is why when you are sick, you call off sick from work because you need to rest. This is why when somebody is truly sick, they go to hospital and they're in the hospital bed to rest, because when you don't rest, you do not heal. Equally the same thing with our children. And I know because our children have that diagnosis of autism, we always attach everything to autism. But if your child is struggling and if having a lot of behaviors, I really want you to remember rest is going to be very important for your children. I have children that come to clinic and we stop all these therapies that are everywhere and we bring in play-based therapies and the kid does well. Nobody heals under pressure. You must support your child to rest. When your child is in the sympathetic mode, they are tense, they are constricted, and they will not heal. We want your child in a relaxed state, the parasympathetic state, which is the rest and digest state, and that's going to aid healing. I put hydration there. I purposefully put it there. Don't roll your eyes. I did it on purpose because think about it. If it's mold in your body, you need mold out. Which organ needs to help us eliminate this? The kidneys. So if you are not going to hydrate your child, the child is going to struggle to heal. So hydration is very important. And again, I don't see a lot of children drinking. So you want to purposefully hydrate your child. Even 1,000 ml is enough, can be enough for other children. But I tell you what, the majority of children do not even get 1,000 ml during the day. They are just snacking and eating and da-da-da-da. So focus on making sure your baby is drinking enough. Let me know in the chat if it makes sense. Does this resonate? Does this make sense? Can we do this? Can we help our children sleep on time? Can we get our children to have fresh air, at least nothing less than 2 hours a day? Those that are in Africa, you got no excuse. Can we exercise, get our kids walking, go walk the dogs? Can we eliminate unnecessary therapies? Think about it when your child has got more toxicity. Really, this grilling of therapies is not going to work because the child has got a lot of neuroinflammation. Can we get our children to rest? Can we do that? I'm sure we can. Let me know in the chat. Let me know. Finally, we can talk about the diet. I'm a nutritionist, right? So let's talk about the diet. Which diet would I recommend in clinic for the majority of my children that come in with mold toxicity? The key takeaway from this subject is to remember mold is these things are living beings. We need to starve them, okay? We need to starve them. When we looked at those two labs, we saw that the majority of children will have gut issues. So we need to heal the gut. We also need to heal the immune system, okay? And the majority of children that have got mold issues will also have, unfortunately, mast cell issues. So they will not tolerate a lot high histamine food. So in clinic, I usually default on putting my children on a low histamine diet, low histamine anti-inflammatory diet. That's what I usually put my children on. And if their labs are indicating that they have got oxalate issues, I also put them on a low oxalate diet. But really the go-to diet, which is a default for a child that comes into hospital, a child that comes to clinic with mold toxicity, it will be the low histamine diet. Because what am I trying to do? I'm trying to cool down the system because energetically mold mycotoxins are going to be hot. This kid is energetically hot and moist. Remember, mold like moist areas, damp areas. So energetically, the child will be hot and moist. So what we then do is to bring in calming foods that are not moist. So we are removing the things like dairy, which is damp and moist. We're removing things like gluten, which is gluey, again, damp and moist. We're removing things like sugar, which again is damp and moist. We're removing processed foods because they drive inflammation. So anything that has got more than 2 or 3 ingredients, we don't bring it into our child's diet. We bring in a low histamine diet. And what I always say to my parents, I want you to think of a rainbow diet. Really, it needs to be rainbow. You look at the food diet, your child's plate. I want you to see colors. I want you to see yellow. I want you to see green. I want you to see pink. I want you to see red. I want you to see purple. I want a rainbow diet. That's what I usually say to my clients in clinic, and it's very achievable. But also to help aid healing, I always make sure that the children have got a little bit more of proteins. Why? Because the majority of them will be depleted. Because when you have issues with inflammation, it depletes. The demand for proteins is going to be high. And we know proteins are very important because they are the building blocks for the amino acids. And we know we need those amino acids because of what? The neurotransmitters. So we add in proteins. And in clinic, I usually bring in protein shakes just to top it up for children. But if you cannot do anything, I just want you to think rainbow diet. Can we do that, mummies? Can we do that, ladies? Can we do that? Can we do a rainbow diet? Just go look, think rainbow. Let me know in the comment what color foods are you thinking of right now? Can you get red cabbage? Can you get green cabbage? Can you get kale? Can you get what can you get at home that is colorful that you can bring in for your child? Okay, but remember, we also want to aim for a low to moderate oxalate diet. We do not want high oxalate diets because we already have gut issues in the majority of our children. Again, on the downloadable ebook that I created, a complete guide to dealing with mold for parents, you will have the diet that I recommend, and I also recommend, I've got recipes that I recommend for you, so don't forget to download that. So we've looked at the environment, we've removed the trigger, we've removed the source of mold, we've addressed our lifestyle so that we don't have a risk of heavy mold in our environment. We have looked at our lifestyle, implemented a lifestyle that aids healing. Our child is sleeping, our child is eating well, and our child is on a rainbow, healthy, low histamine diet where possible. Now we need to close the gap and support the organs. Let's talk about supplements. And I know many of you have been waiting for supplements, but I just want to give you a side note. Do not make any supplementary changes into your child's protocols without consulting a professional. And if you're working with me, this is just for information's sake. You can talk to me about it later on. If you're in the deep dive, the majority of the things that I'm going to be talking to you about here right now, they are not new to you. We've addressed most of those things and you're already implementing what needs to be implemented. But if you're not working with someone, you're welcome to work with me. You're also welcome to work in the deep dive. But please do not make any changes into your child's protocol without consulting your practitioner. I am here to share information with you that you can take to the health professional and say, hey, I got this woman on the master's class and she told me this and this, can we look at that? Okay. So when you talk about supplementation, the reason we supplement, understanding the reason we supplement is going to be very important. We supplement in some cases to close the gap where we have depletion. We want to make sure that the child has got therapeutic levels of those nutrients in the body. So we supplement to close the gap. In some places, we supplement to repair a damage that has happened. So we bring in supplements. In some cases, we supplement to remove things that are in our children's bodies because they are not supposed to be there. So we bring in supplements that removes those things out of the children's bodies. And sometimes we supplement to just give the body energy and support so that it can do the heavy lifting that it's not supposed to be doing. So if you hear me right, it means that sometimes we may need to bring in a few supplements, a number of supplements to work synergistically. So not just one, to work together to give us the beautiful results. But a side note, less is more. in this case. Okay, so no, don't bring everything and everything because you think it's going to be helpful for your child. It's not going to be helpful. The system is overwhelmed. You need to go easy with the system. But of course, there are some things that we know very well that they will need to be brought in. But I also want us to look at this illustration of the impact of mold to the body. When you look at the documented systems or systems in regards to symptoms associated with mold, it means that when we are implementing any therapeutic protocols, we also have to think about these systems. We are not just going to do the gut. We have to address neuroinflammation. We have to support the immune system. So not one thing is going to make a difference. When it comes to our children that have got level 3, level 2 autism that are carrying a heavy load, we need to support the systems. But again, less is more. Okay, so we want to look at the system, the immune system. What can we bring in to support the immune system? So we're talking about antioxidants. We want to calm the system down. We want to reduce oxidative stress. We want to reduce neuroinflammation. So you're going to think about supplements that do just that. What kind of supplements are we talking about? We're talking about vitamin E. We're talking about vitamin A. We're talking about alpha lipoic acid. We're talking about vitamin C. All these will support the immune system. And then we go to the GI system. The GI system, we are looking at the liver. We're looking at the stomach, the intestines. We're talking about the gallbladder. We need to bring in supplements that will support that system, the gut. We are talking about from the mouth to the anus. We're talking about bringing in supplements that will do just that. So because we do not have time, which I'm sure you will understand, we have already gone past our time, I will not be able to address and tell you which supplement for each system. That's why the deep dive is there. You're welcome to join it, and I would love you to be there. Let's get this mold out of the body, right? Let's get this mold out of the body. That's the whole aim of all these things that we are doing. Let's get the mold out of this body. What can we do? The first and foremost important thing that you want to do is to open the detoxification pathways. Okay, so the nutrients that you will need are nutrients that support the opening of the detoxification pathways, the nutrients that will support the elimination of these toxins. So what are you talking about? So to take the mold out of the system, we cannot do that without opening the detoxification system. We can't do that. Okay, you can never bring binders to a child that is already clogged. We need to open the detoxification system. So I know I've already spoken. We've had a master's class on opening on supporting detoxification, and what I'm going to repeat. Some of you have heard about it. If you haven't, then there is a video where I talk about detoxification, opening of the detoxification pathway to allow detoxification to happen. So if you haven't watched that, if you're not in that master's class, I think it's going to be on repeat in the next 3rd week, not this new coming, the following week. You can actually join me in that master's class. But really, we want to make sure that our children are sweating, okay? So exercises will help our children sweat, because the skin is a big detoxification organ that we should never forget. We want to make sure that our children's lymphatic systems are open. We don't want our children to have swollen lymph nodes, to have clogged. So we need to work on things like dry brushing. We need to bring those in. And if your child really is clogged up, in most cases, practitioners will know what to use to support that opening of those of the lymphatic system. We also need to make sure that your child is weeing, okay? The kidneys are working properly, because if the child's kidneys are full of oxalates, then if we start pulling these mycotoxins out of the system, it's going to overwhelm the body. We also want to make sure that your child is not bunged up. You cannot think about binders if your child is already bunged up. We need to make sure your child is pooing nothing less than once a day. Your child is pooing every single day before you bring in the binders. And of course, we need to support the big organ of detoxification, and that's the liver. Again, you bring in things like milk thistle, because if the liver is not working, it's going to be clogged. We're going to have recirculation of these things, and it's going to be a painful thing. So we want to bring those things on board. And that is opening the detoxification channels. Okay, we need to do that. Once you've done that, you also want to address the pathogenic overgrowth, because these things are multiplying in millions in your child's tummy. Really, once you support the immune system, remember, you got to support the immune system. We spoke about that. You want to now support the digestive system. Eliminate the candida. Work on getting rid of candida and clostridia and the C. diff, parasites. You want to get rid of these things, because when you do that, you lessen the burden that the child is carrying, and you're opening up the channel. So really, you want to address the pathogenic overgrowth. Remember, with the little kid that we looked at, the organic acid test with a lot of yeast and candida, really, that's exactly how we did it in clinic. And that's how I work. I will not just jump the gun. We are still addressing mold by addressing candida. Okay, we are still addressing mold by opening the detoxification pathways. We're still doing that. So I really want to encourage you to do that. Once you get rid of these invaders, this pathogenic overgrowth, then you want to think of bringing in things like probiotics. But I just need to say a side note, less is more. Okay, less is more. For the majority of children that are hypersensitive, they will react to the majority of probiotics. Okay, so if you go in there and start your child at a higher dose, they will react. So you want to start slowly and increase per time. You open the capsule for the hypersensitive kids and you increase with time. And what I found in clinic, Saccharomyces boulardii is usually the most tolerated. For those that are in the community, you will have this probiotics, don't worry about it. But for those that are watching on replay, you want to consider Saccharomyces boulardii, and if it's well tolerated, you want to bring in supplement probiotics that are multi-strains. I have a link protocol for the supplements that I use, so you can take advantage of that, and the link of where I get my supplements from. Okay, for quality assurance. So probiotics, you start slowly. So once you have dealt with the gut, you've got your probiotics well established, then you can start thinking about binders. Okay, and in terms of binders, this is why it's very important for us to know which mycotoxin we are dealing with, because not all mycotoxins will respond, or will respond to the same binder. Each and every mycotoxin is unique to itself, so it will need a specific binder. And I can tell you this, we see amazing results for the majority of children when we get that piece right. So what binders are they? There are quite a number of binders that are out there, but for most of you parents that are out there, I probably can share with you some of these ones, because I know you're going to find them. But for those that are working with practitioners, you can always ask your practitioner to bring in a multi-strain binder that is effective, so that your child doesn't have a lot of things. And by the way, Saccharomyces boulardii is equally a probiotic and a binder. So that's why you find, for the majority of my kids, it's usually the first line. Okay, it's the first line because of that reason. So on top of the list of the binders, it will be charcoal, because I know even in Africa, in Gambia, you will find charcoal. In Cameroon, you're going to find charcoal. Zimbabwe, you're going to find charcoal. So go for the charcoal. In clinic, we look at things like GI detox. We love GI detox because it's a combination of binders in there. It's been very, very successful. Again, the link is in the bio if you want to know where I buy this. But activated charcoal alone is going to do a great deal for the majority of mycotoxins. Okay, and we also have bednut clay. You can use that successfully. But remember, beautiful souls, remember, these are binders. So because they bind, they also drive constipation. So when you bring in binders, you need to make sure that you take the necessary steps to make sure your child is pooing and your child doesn't get constipated. And you can also consider things like chlorella. You can find this in a number of places. They're very easy to find. But if you want to take it a step further, and if you want therapeutic binders, your link is below where I share what I use in clinic. Does this make sense, guys? Does this make sense? Does this make sense? Do you have any questions? Let me know in the chat. Have I lost you at any point? Let me know in the chat. How do you feel? Do you need more support? If yes, just let me know in the chat. Do you need more support? Just say yes, 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 yes. And what do you want me to address next? Let me know in the chat. I'm here for you. Remember that.